After reinforcing the front mountings, I shifted to the back of the engine bay to reinforce the suspension mounts. These are a long construction down from the chassis rail to the front of the wishbones. I found lots of sealant in gaps between the top of the chassis legs and the bulkhead, so I'm clearing that out and I want to press these together. It may have been a noise and harshness reduction method, but for the rally car I want this area to be as strong as possible. I also found a bit of a gap working up along this joint of the bulkhead to the inner wing and wheel arch. So I scraped all that out too. Blew out all the debris, and then I could tap that together with the hammer, joining the two edges. So when I stitch weld those, it'll all have a better grip on itself. Cleaned up some of the surfaces a bit more with the wire cut brush. I got a bit of flash rust since I was working on this the last time. Working with a scraper now on this little area that the grinder and wire wheel can't get at. I did the same work over on the left hand side of the car, right into the corners, and these are areas that these cars do corrode, so it's good to have all this in order. Okay, so started welding down there. Did a little bit first because I wasn't getting the two pieces of metal together, so once it was welded then I could tap it down nice and tight. Still finding I need to pulse the welder on these because there's still so much contamination I just can't remove. It's very light metal, so I'm just doing my best with it really. You can see now I've got some of that sealant on fire, which is a nuisance as it's burning away the gas that shields the weld. Big gap here too. Tapping that with the end of a lever bar. This work really makes you feel hands-on with the construction of the car. Got quite a flame going there now. Warm my garage anyway a little bit. The airline is handy for blowing these out. Of course, this work is reducing the amount of flammable materials on the car, which is another safety advantage for rallying. Another little gap there. This is near the area where I'm going to have to do some repairs, so I want all the stuff I'm keeping to be well held together before I do start cutting and welding in new sections. I'm having quite a fiery day. That's very thin metal, so I'm glad to get that together. If I do continuous welds on that stuff, it just burns through. This is nice, thicker stuff. I think it's visually obvious how a few extra welds here are really strengthening this up. Moving around to where it attaches to the underside of the chassis leg. This mounting actually has a number of pieces to it which are spot welded together, so I'm stitching those as well to make the entire thing a bit stronger. Decided not to go completely continuous. I think that would have been more than necessary. I could transfer too much shock into the shell. There's a box section that sort of squares off the floor and makes this strong kind of H out of the car's actual structure, and that's what these suspension mountings connect onto. So I'm building that up a little bit as well. I want to remove the rear bushing of the front wishbone so that it doesn't get damaged by the heat from the welding. So I had to move the axle stand and just loosen that off and push out the bushing. And I'll tighten them back up again because these are actually a great position for the axle stands. I might be fitting poly bushes to this, but either way there's no point in wasting a good bushing. I'm following the various seams with the welding. Now this was a clip for the fuel line and one brake pipe going back. Just take that off. So I'm going to route them through the interior, and it's just a focal point for rust. I welded all around the seams of that support for the wishbone, so I feel much more confident about how the forces from that will be translated back into the chassis. And then I did all that same work on the other side, and then just finished off with this rear transmission / engine mount.